Jan Lisiecki was born in Calgary, Canada. That's right, he's Canadian. And he began studying piano at the age of 5, and he made his orchestral debut at the age of 9. He has since performed nationally and internationally at many of the world's leading concert halls, including New York's Carnegie Hall, London's Royal Albert Hall, and with many of the world's finest conductors and orchestras. He has 3 recordings and an exclusive contract right now with Deutsche Grammophon, and he's in the studio with me this morning because he's in town to perform some Mozart with the Manitoba Chamber Orchestra. Good morning, Jan.
Good morning.
Thanks for coming in this morning.
It's such a pleasure. So nice to be here.
And I know you mentioned just before we went on air that you knew about us because you are friends with one of our announcers, Eric Friesen.
Absolutely.
And he's talked about us, and we even had one of your station IDs on.
Exactly.
I
was wondering how that was possible, and then it was reminded to me that it was by phone. So.
Oh yeah, it's a very the modern thing, you know.
Exactly. It exists.
It exists. The phone. Well, before we start chatting, when I play that piece by Chopin, when you hear it, do you know that it's you playing? Can you tell?
Sometimes I do know instinctively. Other times I'm second guessing myself, and other times I almost feel like criticizing what's happening inside. That's a natural. I guess it's a natural feeling because it was recorded a year and a half ago, and really, you change in your vision of how you play things over time. Especially since I'm still performing these pieces. I didn't let them dry in a corner. I kept on performing them in concert all the time, and that perspective, that feeling, how you want to play something changes with every evening that you perform it. So I think for that reason, sometimes you've gone in a completely different direction than how you recorded it. And I still stand by what I did, certainly, but it may not be the way I find most invigorating at the present time.
Mm-hmm. That's what I wanted to ask you. I mean, let's say you've been playing for a long time, 15 years or so, but really, the last 5 or 6 years have been very intensive for you in terms of touring and recording. Have you found that the way you approach music has changed in the last number of years?
The way you approach music is continually changing. I think, though, the most fundamental principle for me is that not only do I love the music, but also I want to show it and share it with the audiences, be it an audience that's listening to the radio, to the CD, or there at the concert. And I want to present the music in the best way possible, show the genius of the composer, his talent, not how well I can play it. My being there is only a conduit for the music, and that's what I truly want to demonstrate when I'm on stage.
Yeah, they talk about, when you talk about a young performer, I'll call you a young performer. I mean, I know there's various ages. You get ages of 5 and people who are older. They often talk about, throw out the word virtuoso, and I think that to me that sort of detracts in a sense from, as you say, the musicality and the emotion. I think probably when I listen to your music, yes, you obviously have that incredible talent, but it's also feels to me that it's about emotion in your music as well.
It certainly is. The technical aspect is always important, if only to get past it, because the longer you focus on the technical difficulties and challenges, the more the music starts sounding like a sport, like some kind of competition where how fast can you play it, how accurately can you play it. And frankly, that's not what it's about. That's the true beauty of music in the art form, because every time we perform it, it's going to be different. No matter what you do, it doesn't stay the same. There's no way that you can actually create an identical performance more than once. And if you try to do that, then I think you inhibit the possibility of creating in the moment. And that creativity, that magic actually, that happens only when you're in that particular evening on stage with that orchestra in that concert hall with the right temperature and right emotion, also from the audience. Then there's some magic that happens. And adjusting to every evening is something that we all have to do as musicians, and even the more so, I think, as pianists, since we almost never are able to perform on the same instrument, which means we're not only adjusting to all the normal factors, but also to this new friend that we've just made. Because ultimately what we have to do with the piano is make a friend, make sure that we bring out the best qualities of this friend, and try to ignore as much as possible the things that bother us, and just like in real life.
Mm-hmm. Now you have 2 recordings on Deutsche Grammophon, and you've got an early recording of, you've got 2 recordings of Chopin, and then you've got the one Mozart on Deutsche Grammophon. So those are the 2 composers that we as listeners and consumers, I suppose, can identify you with. Are there any other composers that you've been really investigating and that you enjoy playing as well?
Yes, in fact, I don't think there's many composers I could name that I really don't like. I love Bach, and I play lots of his music, and certainly I could record it, but it's not about just recording and just having a CD. It's more about doing something that not only has merit and has purpose and should be out there, but now, I mean, everybody can record anything. Perhaps it's not on Deutsche Grammophon, but still, you can release a CD in a matter of days, no problem.
Not me, I don't think.
You could.
I could.
You could.
You wouldn't want to buy it, though.
But that's the point. You wouldn't want to buy it. You raised exactly my point. It's not about just having a CD out there. It's not about it selling either 20,000, 30,000 copies, but having something that will hold some kind of a purpose in the classical music world. So recording Mozart's Concerti 20 and 21, for me, I felt not only was it a way to introduce myself with these concertos that show really who you are in the most raw form. It really delves into what your capabilities as a pianist are, technically and musically. They're not virtuosic by no means, but they have such purity that if you can't play it well, then you can hear it. So that's what it's about, releasing a CD that you feel has some kind of purpose for you or for the music that you're serving.
So that being said, can you give us a hint as to where you're moving towards, perhaps, for your next recording? Or?
Yes, I'm going with a romantic repertoire, but it's not Chopin, but it also starts with sh. So if you think of...
Schumann, Schubert?
Yeah, well, the first guess was very close. So, yes, and it's also with orchestra, and it's a recording that I'm enormously looking forward to.
Any ideas when, or?
It's going to be done in September and released probably early next year.
Mm-hmm. Excellent. So I'm in the studio with Jan Lisiecki, and he is in town to perform with the Manitoba Chamber Orchestra tomorrow night. He's doing Mozart Piano Concerto number 26. Now, Jan, you've pretty much lived on the road the last number of years. As I mentioned, you're still fairly young. You're 20 years old. You've been on the road, I'm going to say, for a minimum 5 years. I know you used to do a lot of traveling with your parents. They used to come with you and, be your
still do.
Your entourage and
be my friends.
Be your friend.
Be my friends. Be my
Support.
family away from home. I mean, if you're away from home so much, you want to have a piece of home with you.
So what are the challenges with sort of being on the road at such a young age for a long, long time?
The early challenges, of course, were continuing with school, but that was always a condition that my parents had set out, that if your grades drop one bit from school, then you're going to stop traveling, not the other way around. So they never did, to say the least. And
you graduated.
I graduated from high school.
Yeah.
I'm doing a Bachelor of Music. That's probably the biggest challenge, balancing performing and being in school.
Where are you studying?
In Toronto, Glen Gould School of Music.
Glen Gould School of Music.
But it's important at the same time. I think you don't want to regret anything in later life. Certainly I don't regret anything so far that I've done in my life, but I don't want to think in 10 years that, I should have gone and had the chance to go do a Bachelor of Music. Of course, you can't do everything, being and doing what I am doing, but I try to do the things that I like and simply enjoy every day. I love traveling. I love the newer experiences, and I think I learn a great deal, not only about music, but also about people and about the world. And that really counts, no matter what I'll end up doing.
What about friendships and stuff? I mean, I know if I had a friend and he was traveling all the time, I think it'd be interesting when he came home, he'd have so many stories. Is there a sort of a long distance thing happening, or?
I think the fact that I travel really weeds out the not true friends, and you stay only with the people who you really like being with. And true friends are those that even if you haven't communicated for a few months, haven't seen each other for a few months, you get back and you don't have to catch up and say, oh, this and this happened, but you just go in and it seems like nothing ever happened and you have a normal conversation about whatever. You can, of course, tell the stories or you can talk about current affairs, but the fact is that you don't have to reconnect suddenly from scratch. And I think I have only those types of friends, obviously, and they're all around the world, not only in Calgary where I live, but in many of the cities that I frequently perform in, and that's a great gift.
Mm-hmm. Well, you're in town to perform Mozart 26. Let's talk briefly about that work. What's your connection with the Mozart Piano Concerto 26, and tell us a little bit about it.
Well, Mozart wrote 27 piano concerti, and each one of them is slightly different. 26, I think, returns to a certain degree to Mozart's carefree character, but he was also carefree a little bit with writing it. He left some pieces of the piano part not finished or slightly unwritten. And if you were wondering why, well, Mozart wrote these concertos mainly to perform by himself as soloist. So he probably did not need to write them down so much. And certainly it's not that it's completely unfinished, that half of it's unwritten. There's simply a few parts that you're left guessing. Thankfully, the orchestra part is completely written, and based on that, you can surmise quite easily what is to happen. Mm-hmm. This concerto requires, as many do, a close collaboration between the orchestra and the pianist and the conductor, of course, finding somehow a balance and finding also this communication, because there's continuous dialogue between the orchestra and the soloist, which is always fun. Those are the best concertos.
Just before we wrap up, you travel, you record, you play music, you do your own social networking stuff we just chatted about earlier before off air. You're also involved in UNICEF Canada. You want to talk a little bit about that? Absolutely,
thank you. I believe I'm so lucky just to be born in Canada. We all are, and to live in this wonderful country. And of course, traveling, you experience many things, but what UNICEF in my life means is, of course, it's just a small way to give back. It's my way of trying to do as much as I can to help children which are not so lucky, which probably will never get the chance to even start playing the piano, but hopefully give them at least access to education and clean water and the ability to grow into good and educated human beings. And
so you're like a spokesperson for UNICEF, yeah?
Completely.
Wow. Well, congratulations.
And of course, now with everything that's happened recently in Nepal and Syria, I think it's, well, as good a time as any to help those young children. And I visited refugee camps off the Syrian border in Lebanon. I was performing in Lebanon, got to go see these camps where these children are still going to school, and I think that's probably the only normality that they have in their life. They're away from home, they're living in a place that's absolutely not suitable for a child to be in. They have to work half the day to try to make ends meet, but they still have this school that they can go to and learn to read and write, learn about history, about their country, about Syria, and I think that's a great gift.
Well, Jan, thank you.
Thank you very much
for coming in. I just wanted to say, congratulations on your young career so far. Very, very humble, grounded individual as well, which is always nice to see. And have a great concert tonight. Tomorrow night. Sorry, Wednesday night.
Yes, I hope it's tomorrow.
Yeah, you hope it's tomorrow. Yes. Surprise.
Thank you.
Excuse me. Jan Lisiecki is in town to perform tomorrow night with the Manitoba Chamber Orchestra Mozart Piano Concerto 26. Now, I don't have a recording of that with Jan. Unfortunately, he hasn't recorded that yet. And I say yet because you never know. But I do have a recording of his Piano Concerto 21. So I'll play you one movement from that. Here is Mozart Piano Concerto, Jan Lisiecki.